guaranteed by law. So this is just to give a sense of the sponsorship costs. So as I mentioned, there's a 10-year term and there's a 20-year term, and you can, VEC members can sponsor any number of panels. I just put in, 10, 1, 10, and 20, just to get a sense of what the costs are. So there's an upfront payment that the participant makes, and you can see those amounts here, and then they receive that monthly credit. You can see the annual credit there, the total credit, and then the total savings. So for the 10-year program per panel, it's $234.75, which is a one-time upfront payment. And then you receive that bill credit back over the next 10 years. And for the 20-year program, that same panel sponsorship would be $412.54, because again, you're receiving that credit for 20 years instead of 10 years. And we, typically tell people that they can sponsor up to the total number of panels that they would need to cover their annual electric costs. And it's available to businesses and residential as well. So since 2016, when we began offering the program, we've had 260 members sign up for this program, and they're sponsoring 7,000 panels in those arrays. So we're expecting and very much hoping that we can offer an enhancement to this program in 2023, or something that's a similar program, but would specifically be for income qualified VEC members. So we've applied for a grant that would be funded by the American Rescue Plan Act of 21 to offer some of these sponsorships to our members who are income qualified for free. So they would receive, a bill credit. In this case, it would be for 5 years. So you can see at the bottom, there would be a $45 per month credit for 5 years, which would result in $2,700 in savings on their electric bills over that time period. And they would receive that a panel sponsorship. So we would be partnering with community action agencies through programs like GreenSavingSmart to identify eligible participants. We would also do our own recruitment for this program. And this is the site that we would be using for participants in that program. This is a old landfill site that's located in Jericho. And so if that program is funded, sponsorships would be available to about 330 income qualified members, and it would be enough to sponsor this entire array, the energy that it's producing. So that is all I had for slides. And I don't know, Eric, if you wanted to take questions now or save them for the end.
I think we can take some questions now. Does Barbara, I see Barbara with a hand up, and I don't know if that was up from before, but do you have a question, Barbara, or does anybody else have any questions? Here you go. Silver Pup, jump in.
I'm just wondering, for me to sponsor a solar panel, it seems to me like there's very little return back. Why might I leave today and make the call to sponsor a solar panel?
Well, it's another, it's many reasons why people decide to sponsor panels. I mean, it could be because they, want to take their dollars and specifically support solar energy. That's one reason. Another reason is that there are, guaranteed savings. I mean, everybody kind of has to decide themselves whether those savings are enough to participate in the program or not. But I mean, everything is very clear up front what you're getting from the program. So, we don't necessarily tell anybody, this is, definitely the way to go for you. But there are, guaranteed savings involved in sponsoring panels through this program.
Thank you.
Great. And Vince, jump in.
I guess I'd like to additionally answer that question in that you're not, all you're paying for is a solar panel. You're not paying for the balance of the system. You're not paying for the inverter. You're not paying for any of the connection costs. So basically you're getting that entire solar benefit from just sponsoring a panel. I don't know if that was part of your benefits answer, but in any case.
No. Thank you, Vince, for jumping in, because that was something that, you know, if I buy my own panel, there's more cost associated with that.
Right.
Inverters and the storage back. Thank you for your input. Appreciate it.
Sure. And the question I had, actually, let's see. Are there any plans to include storage with that type of incentive? Like, for example, you know, either individually, I know you guys have, VC has a storage incentive for per kilowatt month. Is there any plans on having community storage?
Well, that's interesting. I've heard people talk about community storage before. I can't really fully wrap my brain about around how something like that might work, because storage has to be physically located in your home. I mean, unless it's something like a microgrid. And then in that case, I think you could do something like a community storage model if you had something that was like physically located in a neighborhood. So if the grid for that particular section went down, it would be able to back it up. But for something like this, you know, this is available to anybody in VEC territory. So even though the arrays are located in specific towns, you know, somebody in Canaan could participate, somebody, you know, anywhere in our service territory. So I think it would have to be a little bit of a different model if we were doing something like community storage.
Sure. Could I just follow that up? So yeah, specifically, I mean, you'd have to have, you know, for whatever the local, the microgrid would be, some recloser or something, and then the storage, you'd have to essentially isolate the community. So, I mean, it could be a really cool test case, and there are probably some locations that are amenable. I know VEC is really, you guys are really progressive about this kind of stuff. So, yeah, if Cyril has something in mind.
Yes. So we have been having some discussions about microgrids, and we're going through strategic planning right now. And it sounds like you know Cyril, and he is a great person to talk about this kind of things. He's kind of spearheading those efforts. And just so everybody knows, that's Cyril Brenner, who's our innovation leader at VEC. So I think more to come on that, but it's a great thought, and thanks for bringing it up.
Vince, did you have anything else, or you just have your hand? I still have your hand.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No?
Just to have that loud virtual hand up.
Does anybody else have any questions for Lisa? Okay, let's move right on. Steph, do you want to jump in?
Sure, let me share my screen too. Let's see here. Make this a little bit bigger. One sec. All right, hi everyone. Lisa, thanks for starting us off. I am here representing Green Mountain Power, and am one of the members of the innovation team here, and have been helping to administer what I'll talk about today, which is our SunMatch pilot, which is also a community solar program structured a little differently from what Lisa just went over, but has a lot of the same kind of benefits to community members. So I also had to throw up a map of territory just to set the stage of where Green Mountain Power is. And you can see that we serve the majority of Vermont, and we're more located in central and southern, but we have you know, some territory up in Northeast Kingdom and a little bit over in the southeast there, or sorry, northeast. And currently we have 100% carbon-free energy supply for our general mix. And we have a goal of reaching 100% renewable by 2030. But let's get into the solar conversation here. So we launched a new community solar program in April of this year that we call SunMatch. And this is specifically designed for income eligible customers, and I'll show the eligibility requirements. But it's really meant to bring solar to folks who haven't historically been able to access solar. So we're really, trying to bring the benefits to everyone. So what are the benefits? Well, there's bill savings, guaranteed bill savings, and also a reduced carbon impact. And the idea is similar to what you just saw presented, that there's a shared solar array that's not located at the customer home, and but everyone in the program shares the output of the array and receives discounts based on not just what's generated, but actually how much of the consumption is occurring at the same time. So really tying the credits to consuming the solar generation. So that's where the match comes in on the pilot name. So we're really trying to match or encourage the matching of consumption with solar generation, which is really sort of the overall goal for reducing our carbon impact as Vermonters. So the program is open for enrollment now, and will be up until next year around this time, and has space for 500 customers. I'll show a little bit more on, there's an associated app which kind of can help customers figure out how to really maximize the savings they can get in the program by shifting consumption to when the solar array is generating. So typically that's sunny day, middle of the day. That's the best time to really soak up that solar generation and also maximize savings. So a little bit more detailed here. We have two different discount rates depending on whether a customer is already receiving energy assistance program benefits or not. And there's no, in this case, a little different structure from VDC. There's no cost, no upfront payment, and customers can opt out at any time. So there's very little risk here. And it's always fun to see what it looks like on a bill. We do have quite a few line items here, but you can see at the bottom, this customer in this month received a $13 bill credit for their participation. And on average, it really depends on usage levels, but on average, a participant can expect to save about $150 per year in this pilot. I've mentioned this before, but we've designed it to really try to soak up the solar generation, and this is just, the app can help kind of show your usage patterns and hopefully kind of provide some feedback on how to maximize your usage during solar generation hours. So there's an app that is downloadable in both, Apple, wherever you get your apps, I'll say. You can download it once you're enrolled in the program. So the program is targeting lower income bracket. So this table shows the eligibility requirements. And like I said before, a customer can be receiving energy assistance benefits already, but the sort of credit amount is dependent on that status. And enrollment is fairly simple through an online form, or you can always call our call center. They're happy to walk through it with you. And that kind of ends the presentation on SunMatch. And similar to what Lisa was saying, we have an additional sort of community solar proposal that we are hoping will be approved with the Department of Public Service for supporting, access to community solar for lower income segments. So that would be a great program with some state funding behind it that we're really excited about too.
Steph, is there any, and this I guess can go to Lisa too, is there any ETA on when you might know the status of that program as far as the funding you just mentioned?
I've heard it should be this year. We should hear a little bit more in the month of September, because there was like an initial proposal and then there's a fuller proposal that we would be invited to submit. And we should be hearing about that this month, whether we're moving on to the next step, whether the different utilities proposals are moving on.
Okay. A couple questions have come into the chat. Let's see here. Peter, do you want to jump in and just come off mute?
Sure. Happy to. Hi, I'm Peter Sterling. I'm the Executive Director of Renewable Energy Vermont. We're the trade association that represents the hundreds of businesses in Vermont that work in the various areas of renewable energy, like solar power, wind power, advanced wood heat. We've partnered with utilities to move forward. I just do have to say, Vermonters should generally consider themselves lucky to have utilities that are so forward-thinking, like Green Mountain Power, VEC, Burlington Electric, and who've really done so much to help Vermonters move toward a renewable energy future. There's a lot more to do, of course, but we in Vermont are doing really, really well. Erik, when you kicked off this conversation about New England's cost and the costs we pay for electricity, there is another side to that coin, in that Vermonters get access to programs like the ones Stephanie and Lisa detailed, and that's paid for out of rates. Vermont also runs a program through an energy efficiency program through a contractor called Efficiency Vermont that's helped thousands of businesses get off of fossil fuels, transition toward more energy efficiency, and we pay for that in our rates. But this may be hard. I know it's hard when you have to pay a utility bill and you don't have a lot of money, but that saved Vermonters in the long term a lot of money by being basically an invisible power plant. That's what energy efficiency is. It's energy not burned, right? So yes, our rates are higher than Alabama, Texas, pick another state, but we're getting something for our higher rates generally. We have, we use a lot more renewable energy than most states. And we have a lot more energy efficiency programs than most states. And we help low-income Vermonters in ways that other states don't. So that's one thing I just did want to get out there. The other thing we have with our utilities, especially particularly VEC and Green Mountain Power, that I have to mention here, is they've already committed to moving Vermont to 100% renewable energy by 2030, which is fantastic. There's more to do on that. But when we talk about helping low-income Vermonters access community solar and things like that, by the time we get to 2030, we won't need special programs, because every Vermonter will be getting their power from renewable energy sources. And that's really quite a fantastic bigger picture goal that we're trying to achieve. The other thing that I'd like to say in the bigger picture that makes Vermont special, we are the only state in New England, which is the area where we get a lot of our power, that has an in-state renewable energy purchasing requirement. And that's helping Vermonters, have a more reliable energy. It's certainly helped with a lot of jobs in the state. So, we're doing some very special things here in Vermont to not only help us get more renewable energy, but to help our economy by fostering our in-state renewable energy sector. Eric, you had asked me earlier if I could talk about a little bit the industry-wide view of what the Inflation Reduction Act might do. I can take just a second to talk about that. That bill is the bill that President Biden signed in mid-August that does a bunch of incredible things. And the one that I think is really relevant for this crowd, this group, is it locks in something called an investment tax credit. So when you are looking to go solar, put solar on your roof or in your yard, the federal government's going to pay for about 30% of that through a tax credit moving forward. I mean, that's an incredible opportunity that to make going solar more affordable here in Vermont. In addition, another game changer part of that is if you're a nonprofit or municipality, so if you're a church or a school district and you want to go solar, for the first time, you will have access to that money, even though you don't pay taxes. It won't come through an investment tax credit. It will now come through direct payment, and that's never happened before. So we could see a lot in the near future. We're going to see a lot more Vermonters going solar just from this one piece of the investment tax credit being locked in for the next 10 years. So I'd encourage all of you who are thinking that going solar might not be as affordable as you want to reconsider that, given the new law that just passed. Contact a solar company, contact Sunrun or one of the other companies that do residential solar here in Vermont, and have them come take a look at your property and see if it's possible for you to go solar, given the new reality by the Inflation Reduction Act. Eric, are there other things you'd like me to cover or as we move forward, or are there questions for anyone? Oh, sure. Vince, happy to answer your question.
Peter, I was wondering, so with the act, with the IRA, I know there's changes coming online, how these tax credits are going to be used with EVs, with electric vehicles, whereas in the past, if you didn't have the tax liability to use these tax credits, you're kind of out of luck. From what I understand, I think starting next year, if you go to buy an EV at a dealership, you'll be able to pass through essentially this tax credit to the dealer and just collect it right there when you're buying your car. Is that going to work with the same with the solar, with the investment tax credit?
Yeah, if you don't make enough money, you'll be able to get the cash back as well.
That's awesome.
Important for folks.
Yeah.
One of the things I do feel like I have to mention, there are ways to access solar power, and the most popular program to access solar power in Vermont is the net metering program, which I think we all generally understand as you generate power and and then the excess power that you generate that you're not consuming, your dial kind of goes backwards. You get a bill credit for that. And over the last few years, 6 years, the Public Utility Commission, which regulates our energy sector, has decreased the compensation that a Vermonter receives for net metering. And so Vermonters are receiving less every time that dial essentially goes backwards. And that has kind of, lessened the incentive for some Vermonters to go solar. And I mention that because although the ITC will help a lot, at the end of the day, for a lot of Vermonters, this is really an economic decision. Yes, there's the do-gooder types who just want to go solar, and they will, if it's a 12-year payback period or 15 years, they can just do it. But there's a lot of Vermonters that need to see a lesser payback period in order to make it work. A lot of the solar developers I work with will talk, the real sweet spot would be, a 7-8 year payback period would let a lot more middle income type Vermonters access solar power. And so one of the things I just want to plant the seed at is we may want to, always think about increasing the compensation, some Vermonters get for going solar to help make it a little more affordable. The investment tax credit from the federal law will help a lot, but there is still more work we can do here at the state level to make it more affordable. So Vince, do you have a question for me?
Yeah, a couple of questions, or not question, comment. One is that storage is included in that 30% tax credit, which it wasn't previously. And also in response to the net metering, I mean, I think that, I don't know how much of an issue it is, but the fact that credits expire, I mean, for me personally, it's an issue. It's also, I know the reason was they didn't want to retain the liability on on their accounting balance, but for the utilities, but having them not expire, but be compensated at a lower rate, at a wholesale rate, for example.
Right.
So that.
So Vince, I haven't heard that too many times. So you're telling me you generate so much more power that you consume in this, when your panels are really cranking, like, basically April through September, that you don't burn all those credits.
No, this is on an annual basis. I mean, that's the statute.
Right.
That's 5,100 or whatever it is. And
no, I understand, but you're in the pretty
60%.
small minority of residential people who don't end up using the credits up by the time their year is up. Good for you for not using a lot.
yeah, it's more complicated compared to Massachusetts, for example, where there's continues to be a value and incentive for people to put in additional solar.
Right. I hear you. That's part of the give and take we have with the utilities about how to, make sure that net metering is an affordable program and works for everyone. The agreement is to keep it at a year, let those keep your credits for a year. And I understand what you're saying about maybe compensating you in some way for them. And that's certainly a change that we could consider to the program. Certainly we have to work with our partners in the utilities, the utilities to consider that. So I appreciate it.
And I realize on the front end, you're paying what are essentially retail rates for the production. So you have infrastructure costs and, I get it. It just feels like it's time for a balancing of that. In any case, sorry, don't mean to go on.
No, I appreciate it. Your bigger picture point is it's a great one for this audience, Vince, is that, state policy in Vermont, which is now being accelerated by the IRA, is to ask Vermonters to electrify everything. Please plug in your car. Don't buy a gas car. Please convert that oil furnace to a cold climate heat pump. If we're going to ask Vermonters to electrify everything, which is our state policy now moving forward, we need to make sure that that energy is coming from renewable sources, not replacing one user of fossil fuel, a car, with another, which is an electric vehicle powered by energy from fossil fuels. So, our utilities are generally moving in that direction, and there's policies we can do to keep moving faster in that direction. So it is a fair point. Like, how do we encourage the generation of more renewables in Vermont? I appreciate that.
Peter, has there been any discussion about maybe another net metering adjuster that would benefit low income folks or low to moderate income folks, so that maybe, it seems like the early adapters, people that have gone solar, statistically tend to be higher income folks who probably need it the least, whereas the people that really maybe need help.
Yeah.
So has that ever been discussed, or is that plausible?
Yeah. Vermont has a program, the Clean Energy Development Fund, which actually had, some money allocated to consider a low income only net metering program. They're trying to work through it. I think there's a lot of ways, especially with all literally billions of dollars in the Inflation Reduction Act that's not available to states to innovate, to get low and middle income Vermonters, Americans to solar, to create a community, a publicly subsidized program, whether it's net metered or not, to help people get more solar. So yeah, there is definitely that on the table. There hasn't been a lot of energy for that in the recent years because there hasn't been any money to really fund it. And but now I think with the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act, a lot of people are thinking about, hey, what more can we do to use public dollars to help more people who traditionally cannot have a harder time accessing solar power get there. So yeah, that's definitely on the table. And we may see some progress on that in the next 6 months. The Inflation Reduction Act has allocated $27 billion through what they call a green bank to help finance programs like this around the country. And Vermont will certainly be able to apply for and access a chunk of that money.
Okay. Hey, I just want to throw it out there. Chris Roucher from Sunrun. I saw you, Chris. I saw you jumped on a little late. Thanks for joining. Do I need to set you up are you going to present or share a screen, Chris? Do I need to set you up? No. Okay. So I'm going to introduce Chris here, Chris Roucher from Sunrun. Take it away, Chris.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Chris Roucher from Sunrun. We are the country's largest residential solar battery home electrification and EV company now. We partnered with Ford on the all electric F-150 Lightning, and that's put us squarely into the electric vehicle space. Happy to be with you today. You don't have a presentation. I thought I would just share a few thoughts and then join the Q&A. My company, although based in California, we've been in Vermont for a number of years now. And just last week, I was physically in Vermont and was there for a number of meetings and got to spend a good amount of time with Green Mountain Power, which among the other utilities in Vermont is one of the leading utilities in the country. I live in Maine, and I'm always envious of you all who live in Vermont because you're so far ahead on the electrification and clean energy curve. But there's certainly more work to be done. I think from sort of a national solar company perspective, the Inflation Reduction Act is the biggest sort of growth ramp certainty that the renewables and electrification industries have ever seen. And having that reliability and confidence at the federal level should allow everyone to really focus in at the state level now to ensure these programs are designed correctly to maximize their benefit and reach the most people, the most customers possible, especially those who are not early adopters, who may be low and moderate income customers and will need more assistance to take advantage of these offerings. So as mentioned, the Section 25D, the personal investment tax credit, was extended for a decade to 2032 before it starts stepping down. I'll offer just a slight correction that it was not made refundable. So you do have to have a tax liability in order to take advantage of that tax credit, which is to say you have to owe the federal government taxes at the end of the year in order to be able to use that tax credit. The Section 48 commercial investment tax credit was likewise extended. And for those who do not have tax liability, who don't owe taxes at the end of the year, working with a company like Sunrun or any local company in Vermont that offers a lease or a power purchase agreement option, that's a very good way. That's the only way to take advantage of the federal federal tax credit. The IRA obviously also puts in place tax credits and grants, some of those tax credits are refundable for electrification offerings, and many of these are first of their kind. So for main panel upgrades, heat pumps, etc. And I think that's the biggest opportunity that we see, which is to link arm in arm with utilities, with state policymakers, and try to electrify everything in the economy and run it all on clean energy. And if we're all kind of working in that general direction, I think everyone's going to win. The solar providers, the electrification companies, and certainly the utilities, they'll see increased load growth overall. So this is a really exciting inflection point, and Vermont is very well set up for it, especially because the utilities are so progressive and already have lots of programs in place. So Eric, I'll pause there. We can go whatever direction you like.
I just wanted to ask you, Chris, maybe you could go a little further and explain how would someone take advantage of the tax credit with a solar lease program? How are they taking advantage of the tax credit?
Sure. Yeah. So it's sort of how it's exactly how the the electric vehicle tax credit works and used to work with a dealer, where you go to the dealer and you lease the car from the dealer, and the dealer monetizes the tax credit and reflects that in your monthly lease payments as a form of a reduced lease payment. If they didn't do that, then their lease would not be competitive with other companies' leases. So a very similar thing with a company like Sunrun or Sonova or other companies that offer PPAs or leases, where we monetize the tax credit. We offer it to finance companies who provide us with the $30,000 or $40,000 to purchase the equipment, install it on a customer's roof, and then the customer pays us lease payments instead of having a loan or some other some other way of financing it where they may not be able to use the investment tax credit.
Okay, thank you. Vince, did you have a question?
Yeah, actually, you just answered. Chris just answered one of my questions, but the other question, going back to the tax credit for municipalities or nonprofits, that is a direct refund. I mean, not just a refund, that's payment. Is that right?
I'm not a practicing attorney, although I went to law school. I'm not offering any legal advice, and I don't know all the details. My understanding is that municipalities will be able to monetize the tax credit and sell it to finance partners in the way that a for-profit company like Sunrun or Suncommon or All Earth Renewables can also take the Section 48 tax credit and sell it to finance partners.
So would this be selling it at a discount to an aggregator, or would this be like in a lease agreement where you take the accelerated depreciation, for example, or how would that work?
I don't know. And I don't know that all the answers are out there yet, but it does provide another financing mechanism. The way that the tax credit mechanics work today for the commercial tax credit, Section 48, for all the companies, utility and residential scale, that take advantage of it, is it basically allows us to get lower cost capital from a Bank of America, Goldman, someone like that, to pull forward the capital that's needed to buy the equipment and install it. And my understanding is that financing mechanism would work similarly for municipalities, but I'm not sure.
So awkward.
It's we do policy through the tax code here in the US, which is dumb and awkward.
Yeah.
So Peter, it looks like Peter had to jump. I understand he had a varsity soccer game to make it to this afternoon, but he did put a couple links from Renewable Energy Vermont in the chat, if anybody's interested in those. They're in there. And there are some other questions that have popped up, and I think this might be a good one for you, Chris. So Greg says the Vermont Real Estate Association does not have any method for applying a value to private solar systems installed at residential homes. My $28,000 investment to go solar is basically worthless when it comes to adding value to my home. What do you have to say about that, Chris?
I'm going to be undiplomatic. I would say be very careful, because this is a double-edged sword. Mm-hmm. On the one hand, if a municipality, and I can't recall the regime in Vermont, and if solar systems are taxed by the municipality for property taxes or not. Okay. Yeah. So on the one hand, it would be inadvantageous to be taxed by the municipality for putting solar in a roof, and it might wipe out savings because you can pay more in taxes every year. And on the other hand, you want to make sure that if you ever sell your house, that that value is represented to potential buyers. There's some good data out there, I think, from NREL, although it's now 3 or 4 years old, about the value of homes with solar versus those without. But there really is not a good sort of like universal metric around the country. And I'm really surprised that Zillow and Realtor.com and others have not sort of come up with one yet. And I think that's an area where, perhaps we all could partner with Rewire America or another organization to better articulate that value. I know that, we're in our second house now that we've solarized. And when we sold the prior one, the way I articulated it to our realtor, who did not understand this, and to potential buyers, was, when you buy this house, this array is going to be worth X number of dollars. Don't look at it that way. Here is what you will avoid in electricity utility payments every year for the life of the system. And I showed them my app, my SolarEdge app, that had the historical generation. So that's how I articulated it.
Thanks, Chris. And there were some kind of general questions before you joined, Chris. Before we got kind of started, I kind of threw out, who has solar now? If you don't have solar, why not? And what's stopped you from moving forward? And let me look back. I mean, I got some need more information, worry about the cost, lack of education, just researching, What advice can you give folks that are maybe just, just starting to think about going solar and just need to educate themselves a little bit about it?
Yeah, I would say now is a really great time to start the journey because there's no longer any time pressure. There's not a tax credit cliff. So if you start now and you don't end up going solar or electrifying your home for a couple of years, that's okay, right? Obviously, we all feel the urgency of climate change and energy savings, but I think you now have time to really do the diligence you need to do. So I would advise people to get a quote for a system that you would pay for with a loan. You get a quote for a system that would be from a Sunrun or for a similar company for a lease or a PPA. Get a bunch of quotes, compare them together. You can also take a look at energysage.com, which is a funnel to help you do this. Certainly if your utility has resources, talk to the utility as well. And take your time. And I think for me, the biggest piece of advice I would offer is if you can, try to, if you have appliances that are reaching end of life or a car that's reaching end of life, try to electrify your home and your life as much as possible first. And then you'll understand how much solar you'll need because you're at risk of undersizing or possibly even oversizing if you don't electrify first. So
yeah,
get that heat pump water heater, take advantage of those tax credits, get that induction stove if you can, get a used EV if you can, and do that all first, and then take a look at how much solar you need.
I think that's great advice, and I can speak from experience. My wife and I now have one full EV and one plug-in hybrid that we both of these purchases came after our solar install, and we definitely want more solar now. Didn't put enough in, so I think that's great advice to get your usage figured out maybe before committing. Thanks, Chris. Does anybody else have questions for Chris? I do see some more info in the chat I want to go over, but any kind of general residential solar questions for Chris? Okay, let's see anything else. I have one for you, Chris. With the IRA, do you see more domestic production as far as equipment, solar panels, and do you see prices going up, coming down? Is it going to affect? What do you think?
If I knew the answers to all that, if you all gave me all the money you have, we could make millions of dollars here if we placed some bets. But I don't know. I think the short term is going to be a bit chaotic in terms of supply and pricing before we see the market start to react to the drivers in the IRA. Certainly right now, with trade disputes and forced labor concerns and skyrocketing demand, supply is really, really tight. And pricing is really high. For the first time in history, we've seen pricing tick up on solar and batteries recently. So I think in the medium and long run, the IRA will hopefully help to provide downward pressure on that pricing. But in the near term, I'm frankly not sure what's going to happen.
Okay, yeah, I realize that's maybe not a fair question. Just thought I'd throw that one out there. Chris, what can you tell us about what's been going on, as you mentioned, with the Ford Lightnings, and how is that rolling out? And maybe you could speak to, for the people that don't know, and myself included, basically how this works when if you get a Ford Lightning. I believe Sunrun is the official installer, and then you're basically setting up a bi-directional charge so that you can power your home with your truck, correct?
Yeah, that's right. So Sunrun is the 50-state partner with Ford on installing the charger and the bidirectional home integration system, which we co-developed with Ford and Siemens. The F-150, as you all know, living in a rural state, is extremely popular vehicle, and in fact, it's the most popular vehicle model in the U.S. for I think 40 years running. So Ford really took a big swing in electrifying their most popular vehicle, and they've been unbelievably successful. I've had the opportunity to be in one a few times, and it's a remarkable truck. and in every respect, it's like any other F-150, except it's very fast and electric. And yeah, it can operate as the same way that a Tesla Powerwall or an LG Chem battery would operate in your home. So you can plug it in to the inverter that we would install. And then if the grid goes down, the truck can power your home. If you have the long range version of the truck, it can power your home for 10 days or more if you conserve your electricity usage. And if you have solar, then you can, 130 kilowatt hours, I see the question there, is 130 kilowatt hours is a battery capacity long range truck, which is 10 Tesla Powerwalls. Or you can stay off grid indefinitely if you have solar. So that's a really exciting offering, and the trucks are already being delivered to people in Vermont, which is really fantastic. Obviously the long range high trim truck is really expensive, as is the gas version. The gas version is incredibly expensive. I didn't know that trucks were so expensive, but they are. But Ford does offer a much more modest fleet version of the all-electric F-150 that you can get for, I believe, in the 30s. So that's something to inquire about if you're interested.
Oh wow, Vince, did you have a question?
So yeah, I mean the trucks or the vehicle-related storage, I mean, they're awesome for backup, especially if you don't have to drive. But at what stage is the vehicle to grid integration right now? I mean, it just seems like a really complex issue. You know, how and when and where and how things are going to be assigned, how they're going to be available as an ongoing resource.
Yeah, I would say that we've already installed a number of these bidirectional trucks. We took a very deliberate approach with Ford when we designed the equipment, not to get too wonky, but this is vehicle to grid DC, not AC. So the truck is obviously very smart and has a battery on board, but the bidirectional functionality is on the wall in someone's garage or in their home. And that consists of an inverter and a switch, a home integration system. And the hardware on your wall looks identical to the hardware that would be on your wall if you had a stationary battery. So it's almost exactly the same as a stationary battery, except for the battery rolls around on wheels. So it's actually much less complicated than you would think. And we are working with utilities around the country, including Green Mountain Power and the biggest utilities in the country, PG&E, Southern Company, Duke, et cetera, on making sure this is a smooth customer experience.
Cool. Kevin in the chat says, considering the Northeast salt usage in the winter, is the Lightning rust proof? Any ideas?
It's a great question. I've actually crawled underneath one. I cannot attest to whether it's salt proof or not, but if you look underneath, there's no exhaust, there's no exposed metal. It's just a battery. It's a battery compartment that I believe is hard plastic. So
right.
I can't say, but having lived in the Northeast for a very long time, it looks like it's less prone to rust. Yeah,
that's the way it looks to me as well. And then there's it looks like, Lisa, you've got these in the chat. There were a couple questions on peak demand. Anne Wallace from Heat Squad has put a few things in the chat here. First, she gave you a nice kudos to the co-op and the Green Mountain Power. And you've answered that too. She wanted to know if Washington Electric or any of the smaller utilities, any plans for similar programs. Looks like you've answered that too. Thanks, Lisa. I'm catching up on the chats here. Anne also asks, I hear people say we need to fix the grid before we do more electrification. Can anyone help with good answers to that? Anybody want to take a stab at that? Lisa, Steph?
I can take a stab on that. No, I mean, we are electrifying now and the grid can handle it. We want to do it in a smart way. And that's why we're looking at things like V2G with, the F-150 Lightning and have GMP has some special EV rates to make sure the charging happens when, not during peak times. But we've got a lot of flexibility in those large batteries on wheels, which is great. So, we're designing programs to make sure we electrify in a smart way, and we're going to continue to do that. So I'll let Lisa add anything more there.
No, I absolutely agree with that. I mean, from BEC's perspective, we don't have any large scale distribution issues that we're grappling with, or that we see ourselves grappling with in the near future. We actually do have the problem of too much generation in a big chunk of our service territory, where some of those resources actually have to be curtailed by the ISO, which controls the grid for New England. And so they tell them to shut down because there's too much generation. So there's a good chunk of our service territory that could actually handle a lot more load at different times. So different appliances and things like electric vehicles coming on could actually help us solve, part of an existing problem. And then I completely agree that vehicle to grid is going to be a game changer because it can help us during those peak demand times and help people, be even more flexible with usage than EVs have been to date, because they'll be able to help with things beyond just EV charging, where we can ask people not to charge, during, say, like 4 to 9 p.m. during the week. We can ask people not to charge things like electric vehicles. It'll go beyond that, and they may actually be able to pump energy out onto the grid, or be able to reduce the load in individual homes where people have that technology. So I think there's going to be a lot more flexibility coming onto the grid that will help us deal with a lot of these system issues that could come from electrifying more and more of our lives.
Here's one for you guys. Greg are the utilities prepared for any cybersecurity attacks and that could shut down the grid and protect EV owners and PV array owners / customers?
We do cybersecurity training all the time. I mean, it's very much a major focus, and I'm sure that that's the case for all utilities. Just making sure that all of our systems are, where they need to be, and a lot of it is really about human beings and how human beings can be manipulated to create vulnerabilities in systems. So we do a lot of training with our employees on things to look for, email attachments not to open, all kinds of things like that. So yes, that's very much on our radar. And anytime we, are creating a connection with something that's in somebody's home, that's also very much on our radar for making sure that, all the protocols are being followed to keep everybody's information safe. Okay.
Thanks, Lisa. And Steph, I wanted to jump back to you. Sorry to jump around here, but has Green Mountain Power seen success with I know you have the bring your own battery program. Is that, I guess I want to know, are there enough of those out there that you're seeing, you're seeing help when the grid's overloaded or high demand during the summer? Are they coming online? Is it successful? Are they helping you?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely they are helping. And it's an active program, $850 per kW upfront incentive for folks who own their own storage and enroll in the peak dispatch program. And I think it's a really nice model. We also have a lease-based model with power walls that's also extremely popular. But both programs are doing what they're designed to do, which is help to cut down on peak demand during those critical hours where we incur a lot of costs, and when we have cost savings, we can share those. We share those directly with all customers. So it's a great program for both participants and our whole customer base.
Great, Vince, go ahead.
Hi, I just to follow up on that, I wanted to urge anyone that's in a municipal utility territory to contact their utility and urge them to implement a behind the meter incentive program like VEC has and Green Mountain Power does. VEPSA, the organization that provides a lot of the services, is fairly actively opposed to it and is only looking to utility scale storage. And it's not providing the kind of opportunity, both grid service opportunity and ratepayer opportunity that having that kind of incentive could provide. So, you know, if you have excess production, you can store it, et cetera. I mean, there are just a huge number of advantages. So I'd say, talk to your utility, say, we want that incentive, and they'll have to be responsive, because that's what a municipal utility is supposed to be.
Thanks, Vince. I saw Steph put some links in the chat as well for everybody for Green Mountain Power's Sun Match program. So anybody interested there. Chris, how do folks find out more about Sunrun, and if they're interested in looking into solar in their home, where do they go?
Yeah, sunrun.com, and you should be able to select Vermont and find out all the information there.
Okay, let's see. We've got one more question in here. Okay, Lisa's got a link in here too for their community solar program. Thank you, Lisa. Any other questions out there today? Please don't be shy. Jump off mute if you have any questions, comments, anything you want to share with the group. I think we are going to wrap it up then. I want to thank you all so much for joining, especially Stephanie Ross. Thank you very much. Lisa Morris, Chris Rauscher. Please do, if anybody's interested, take advantage of all this great information, the links here. I want to thank you all again for joining, and have a fantastic afternoon.
Thank you. And thanks, Eric and everybody.